Someone asked me a question today that was so obscure and may actually be an error about what the person was trying to communicate with me about, or ask me about, or tell me about, that I ended up looking up a completely unrelated subject. So let's talk about the subject I found when I was trying to Google something. I tried to look up someone's statement. I'll read it verbatim. It'll be the first line in the description below. And if you know what this person's meaning directly, please tell me. You might want to check out what SOC or SOC has to say and the sergeant teaching Russell's Real Ethical Intelligence and Ownership. Now, something of that nature. Now, I'm quickly going to go through this. I looked up all of that in combinations and found some completely unrelated subject maybe, but maybe this is the subject the person was asking about. One of the things people do on the internet to rabbit hole you or to rabbit trap you with the rabbit tracks is to get you to go chasing ghosts by giving you statements almost like a cue drop here, where you say things that are hard to understand, and a person who wants to figure out what you're saying will go off and look up something unrelated, and it's a good way to keep an idiot busy. Now, considering that I have nothing to do on the channel today, this is something I did. So I decided, okay, I'll look it up and, see if this wheel of misfortune lands on, truth or dare. So here we go. SOC or SOC. Acronym for what? Okay, well, I found Special Operations Capable and Special Operations Command. A sergeant associated with Russell, and if you're not aware, the video it was under concerned a subject of Russell J. Gould and also David Wynn Miller. These are people who produced a system of argument and rhetoric to use in a courtroom. That's saying it nicely. To try to trick the court into letting them, or you, redefine all the words that are used for a law so you can make it to where you win the court case. That's not an oversimplification. This is the equivalent to showing up in a foreign country, like, let's say, France, demanding that everything be written in the law in English and using the grammar that I'm used to so that I can win a case because now I understand it and everybody in the room that speaks French will have a disadvantage. The court then says you have to use a translator, you're not allowed to represent yourself, and that's the end of the discussion. They don't have to rewrite the rules or laws in English, and the translations are made available. And if you don't like it, it doesn't matter. You're not allowed to create a brand new language, which is what Russell J. Gould and David Wynn Miller proposed, by just changing what the words mean in a courtroom. You're not allowed to demand we all use Esperanto simply because you speak it better than I do. That isn't going to happen. We don't have to. Go fuck yourself. So anyway, here we go. But anyway, the only sergeant I found kind of associated with it is someone calling himself Robert Leroy Horton. And he claims, and this isn't provided with any evidence that I can find, to have been an Army Civil Affairs person and also been in Psychological Operations Command for the Army. And also claimed to train Green Berets and all sorts of other things people puff themselves up about that usually ends up being bullshit, but okay. And if he's anything like David Wynn Miller and Russell J. Gould, he probably spends most of his time revising history or lying about it, or not. Or it's some other sergeant. I couldn't find anything directly related to the comment that was left on the channel. As for looking up Real Ethical Intelligence or Ownership, found links that went nowhere, or no links actually. As for Russell J. Gould, he's a guy who makes shit up and revises history, and that's it. So I looked up Robert Leroy Horton's main claim to fame besides claiming to be in these things. By the way, none of these spell it SOC. A claim this person's making in YouTube videos you can find on the internet under War Castles. So now we're at the point at the 4-minute and 15-second mark where I say I went down a rabbit hole unrelated to the question, and again, the question isn't clear, and it may be on purpose vague to make me ask him questions, or it may be that the person simply wasn't able to communicate effectively or not. The fact that this happened right under a YouTube video where I explained to you that you shouldn't listen to people who claim to do correct parsing of syntax and their performance and talking about quantum grammar, who regularly, I should point this out, David Wynn Miller and Russell J. Gould are notorious for misspelling words and using grammar that makes it to where they're not communicating what they say they are. an imprecise, badly grammared, I guess that's a word, and badly spelled set of statements from them they claim to be superior to the law of the land that they're trying to get out of because of a parking ticket, ironically enough. But anyway, here we go. So where does this go? Okay, war castles. To capture the Title IV U.S. flag, a war castle debunking. Here we go. David Windmiller and Russell J. Gould are painted as heroes who create a new nation in the United States by capture of the Title IV U.S. flag away from the British, who wished to take over the United States in 1999 during a bankruptcy that the U.S. government was supposed to have. Again, revising history and shit, this didn't really happen. Yes, you will find people who believe the U.S. government became bankrupt repeatedly. For some goddamn reason, this comes up all the time. It's not true. There's nobody providing any evidence of it, and they'll keep asserting that they've done so, and that they don't have to talk to me or you. I'll get to why in a minute. Anyway, how did David Windmiller and Russell J. Gould supposedly capture the flag in 1999? Because the British were going to take it over because reasons. By filing title and copyright for a statement of ownership of Title IV American flag written in correct parse syntax, quantum grammar, magic words, at the United Nations and the U.S. Post Office to make Russell J. Gould the Postmaster General of the entire world and a Commander-in-Chief of the U.S. government. And only smart people will believe this and not ask for proof because of a claim that this is a secret. And the reality, the world that's been pulled over your eyes, Neo, because it's openly published on the internet, but people don't want to read it back because it sounds stupid. The secret reality that's underneath the surface, like virus scanners install viruses. Believe it or not, there's actually a couple of virus scanners that really did do that. There are also a bunch of them that would have the effect of disabling stuff on your computer that did keep the viruses out, or becoming themselves easily broken into. But that doesn't mean that they install viruses. Oh, but that's what they want you to think. The assertion that the U.S. government is an invalid government and you can override its rules by just magically invoking words that, when you do that in a courtroom, never work. The claim apparently made by Sergeant, or let's just call him Robert Leroy Horton, let's stop saying Sergeant because he hasn't provided any proof, is that he's a whistleblower and an insider because he said these two guys performed some sort of magic involving a U.S. flag, or more accurately, Title IV of Code for the U.S. government concerning the flag. Title IV of the United States Code concerning flag of the United States and or symbols in the United States. Did some sort of magic hooey to prevent the U.S. government from, or us being taken over by the British for some reason, and self-aggrandizingly makes himself commander-in-chief. One of them makes himself commander-in-chief, and this is supposed to be through the Postmaster General of the world. Now, immediately the thing you'll look up is Postmaster General of the world, or one of these expressions. These are specifically phrased words, so you find, by search engine ranking, their page explaining their mythology, so you read their story. And then you don't find a debunking from me, because people like me get flagged all the time. And more importantly, I'm just some random guy. I'm not somebody literally making money selling this horse shit to you. Okay, let's do the Postmaster General part. Every country has to have the ability to send letters to each other. They have to be able to charge for the letter carriers to be paid. They do this through stamps in most countries, at least right now. In order to make it to where you can send a letter from the UK to the United States or the other way, they have to agree that the stamp paid here pays for freight to here. And then they have to settle up every 6 months or whatever for the freight difference, because obviously buying a stamp in Britain might have a different value than buying a stamp in the United States. That's where that comes from. There are international agreements to send letters from one country to another. You might not realize it, but you have to make those kind of decisions about it. Otherwise, you'd have to negotiate freight costs, and the prices would go up and down. That's what it is. That's what that comes from. And there is an international United Nations agreed upon bureaucrat who has to help organize these yearly, or I don't know, how often they happen, renegotiations of money, so that we can send a letter from point A to point B without having to deal with the bureaucracy. Other countries don't have this. You want to send a letter, they figure out the costs, and you hope it works. And if it doesn't work, it gets sent back, and you have to do it all over again and pay for it again. It's not just shipping, like through UPS, that might screw up. This is just sending a fucking letter for a stamp. And that became such a gigantic problem at one point that it became like an international problem. So they solved it by coming up with a set of agreements and treaties on it. And some countries spend too much money, and it's unfair. And some countries don't have to pay jack shit, and that's unfair. That's a real complaint. And yeah, there is a person who's declared internationally the person who's, the buck stops here, and he's the person who gets the short straw. Or maybe it's a committee, depending on what subsection you're talking about. So David Windmiller and or Russell J. Gould claim that the only office in the United States that's valid for having power, and you can be a commander-in-chief, is a post office. That's also, again, another rabbit hole. The first Postmaster General of the United States also happened to be, at one point, a president. Yeah, Ben Franklin. And there was an office he was in charge of that was supposed to sort out screw-ups. And it stopped existing. Right now it's a vestigial component, like a room or something in the U.S. government. That's it. But no, that's what they want you to think. It's a secret cabal of mail carriers running the planet. So yeah, that's where that goes. So what's with the British taking over the U.S.? Okay, explaining this bullshit. Again, this is mythology. None of this is true. The claim is that at one point, everybody changes the timing, at one time or another, the United States became a corporation. It's not a government, it's not a country. You're not living in a country, you're an employee or property or whatever the meme is. And it's based on some wording in an old law written before the 1800s ended that is goofy sounding and is hard to interpret. That would be it. It doesn't matter that it was explained since then and we do know what it means. Doesn't matter that people contemporary of the time explained it back and forth and clarified it later. No, let's ignore that, because we need a meme where two guys get to be the head of the entire planet. Or in one case, the guy says, "Oh, I turned Hawaii into a verb. Now it's a country I'm a king of." That kind of crap is the mythology that's involved in this. So if you came here looking up war castles or Robert Leroy Horton or the Title IV U.S. flag or whatever else I put in the title, this is a first blush response to this bullshit. Yes, it's a mythology, like Star Trek. Darmok and Jalad at Tanagra is a cool story. It has a meaning. It's actually based on previous stories from a long time ago. And it's a bit of mythology that you can learn something from, and it's kind of cool. But Darmok and Jalad at Tanagra has no other meaning beyond that. These two guys trying to bilk people out of money, teaching them to show up in a courtroom and spew crap that won't make them win a court case, that's not the same thing. And these people making up this kind of mythology and getting people to memorize this stuff like a dedicated Star Trek-y person doesn't change anything in the world. It's a neat story. You can make a really cool sci-fi story or some weird parallel universe stuff up. But it has no effect in the real world because it can't. Or does it? So anyway, to the person who posted the original comment that is hard to parse because of grammar problems, please clarify your statement. As for the rest of this stuff, this is where the rabbit hole went when I just tried to look it up. Normally when I look it up, I find out what the person's asking. This time I found a completely unrelated subject. Thanks for watching. Have a good day. Good luck with that. And this is Going Off the Rails with waptek.